Hey, this is Sam Huntington, and you're listening to Hill Climbers. Over the last 10 years, I've ridden bikes in Philadelphia and then LA, and more recently, Austin, Texas. And it's been one of my life's pleasures to meet hundreds of cyclists over the course of this time. And sure, there's been friendships and camaraderie built around some healthy competition on group rides and on Strava. And that's great, but Hill Climbers is really paying homage to those cyclists I've met that I admire off the bike. These are individuals that have really fascinating stories. They're building businesses or they're part of the cycling zeitgeist in alternative ways. And I think it is a fantastic opportunity here with this podcast to tell stories of what they're doing off the bike that maybe you would never hear about on the group ride riding next to them. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce the first episode of Hill Climbers featuring Breakfast Club. This could not be a more appropriate subject for Hill Climbers' first episode, because my life here in Austin, Texas is inextricably woven into the Breakfast Club community. The story of Breakfast Club starts basically in 2020. A group of guys decides to start a casual group ride, and they welcomed all newcomers with open arms. So they weren't taking themselves too seriously. And there was something infectious about their take on this group ride. So what started with a handful of people at the end of 2020, 2.5 years later, is now a monthly group ride that attracts around 500 people. So my friends, two of the co-founders of Breakfast Club, Jake Ritter and Grant Rogers, have joined me for this interview. And they are going to share with us about the genesis of the club, some of the ingredients for its success, and also what the future holds. And this will just be super casual.
Cool.
Like let's just have a conversation. I can edit everything, and there's so much good stuff here. I'm here with Grant Rogers and Jake Ritter of Breakfast Club, and we've teed up a whole bunch of questions for them, just about basically the club's history. It's got a very illustrious 2-year history at this point, and I want to ask them specific questions about how the club was built, and the different players in the success of this thing. So I think it would be great to start. These guys are both very accomplished athletes before bike riding. So I was hoping, Jake and Grant, if you could share with us kind of the story of your athletic career and how you met.
Oh, how we met.
You take that one.
Let's start with how you met. Then.
It goes into the story of Breakfast Club, really.
Grant and I grew up swimming. Kind of a small world. Senior year of college is when you start taking your recruiting trips to different colleges, and that's when Grant and I met. We took a recruiting trip to the University of Texas here
Before
in Austin.
college.
Yeah.
Cool.
Beginning of our senior year of high school.
Yeah.
Lean forward a little bit.
Yeah, we were seniors in high school, and we met on a recruiting trip, and when we both decided to come, we were like, let's room together, and then we lived together for 5 years.
Yeah, we ended up living together for 5 years.
So tell everyone, obviously UT. Can you tell us a little bit about your swimming?
Yeah.
career
So
there?
when you get a chance, I think for both of us, when you get a chance to at least even come on a recruiting trip or get the chance to swim for the University of Texas, it's like telling Nick Saban at Alabama, I don't want to play football for you. It's kind of like if I can go there, I'm going.
Yeah.
And so we both squeaked our way in there, and we didn't really know too many other people, and we had met each other on our recruiting trip, and that's why we decided to room together.
And what was swimming for UT like? I mean, that for those that are not all that familiar with the swimming world, like Jake just said, it's kind of a big deal. So how did you guys do during your college years?
I think back on it as it being like 4 years of falling asleep in classes because you're working so hard in the water all the time.
I think that's what my picture on your phone is.
You asleep, yeah.
Yeah, so we would have a 5:30 to 7 a.m. practice, class until about noon, weights at 1:30, practice at 3:30, get out at 5, get something to eat quick. Then we had to be at study hall. So as a freshman, they wanted to make sure that you were actually doing things. So we would have to go to this thing called study hall, or we'd be in a room, honestly, not too much bigger than this. And there'd be somebody here to watch Grant and I study, just to make for 2 hours, just to make sure that we're doing our homework. And like, there's a picture whenever my picture on his phone, and when I call him, is me sitting in a chair with my head back, sleeping.
Did they like literally wake you up? The proctors would like wake you up and stuff, or
if you had a good one, or not a good one.
Yeah.
If you had a good one, they let
how
you
you
sleep.
look at it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
exactly.
But yeah, we grew up swimming our whole lives and just swam all through college. And then when we were done, it was like, what do we do next? You know, it's like,
So tell us about that. What
I mean,
happened?
I think it all started with Jake, and I mean, your dad bought you a bike as a graduation present. And I remember like you getting this bike as we're done swimming.
What kind of bike?
Just so he is a road cyclist, so it was my first road bike.
Yeah.
Nothing super special. I actually rode that bike until I got a new bike like last month.
Yeah, it's true.
So I rode that for a lot of years. And I just remember I was an idiot. I would not wear a helmet. I didn't have a computer. I didn't know where I was going.
Yeah.
I would just go out and I would ride. I'd get home from work at like 5 p.m. And ride until it was the summer, so until the sun went down.
Yeah.
Cool.
I was still taking classes or something, and you were working at that time.
You were doing your master's.
Yeah, and you would get back from these rides at like when it was dark. I'm like, what are you doing? You're not riding with people in the dark? I'm like, that seems weird, but kind of fun. And so then you went with me, and I got my first road bike.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And like the first ride we went on, I like bonked so hard, like twice, that I could barely.
Do you
get
remember
home.
how long the ride was, or?
I honestly want to say the first ride or the second ride I did was Dam Loop. I
Yeah.
distinctly remember.
Which was like 60 miles or
60
Yeah.
miles,
Yeah.
and I was on flat pedals. Like it wasn't even clipped in. I was in tennis shoes, and Jake was like, "This is a good idea."
I had a similar first bike ride. It was actually like Mount Tam area outside of SF, and had no idea what I was doing. Didn't have clips. I remember it being like the most incredible experience of my life. That was basically the first real road ride I ever did.
Yeah.
Bonked so hard, and I got back to SF, and just like we went to this I forget what the restaurant was called. Went to this Peruvian barbecue, and I just demolished so much food. It was So I was kind of that was my entree
beauty
into
of
sport.
bike riding.
I think I remember we come down towards the end of Dam Loop is this road called Spicewood Springs. Probably like 45, 50 miles into it, and you kind of wind down this like covered tree road. Honestly, one of my favorite roads in Austin.
Yeah.
I just remember waiting at the end for Grant. It is like waiting and
I never
waiting
came.
and waiting. I think you might have got a flat tire.
Oh, okay.
And Nick helped you, but we're getting a little worried.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right, so you guys, basically the story starts with swimming and the UT experience, and then getting bikes right around the same time. So what happened after that? There were a number of years. Grant, you went off to SF, right? And so what were the in between years before Breakfast Club?
I mean, you mentioned San Francisco. The riding out there is incredible, and so I moved out there after I ended up getting my master's, and I took my new bike with me, and I spent 3 years out there falling in love with riding and learning how to climb and all this stuff out there. And I would come back and visit, and Jake, I would always rent a bike, and we would ride around Austin. And then I eventually just missed it so much. I was like, I'm gonna move back, and I moved back, and didn't know who to ride with. This was in 2019.
Somewhat recently.
Yeah, end of 2019. Okay. I was like, damn, I miss Austin. I'm going to move back after 3 years of being in the Bay Area. And the only person I knew to ride with was Jake. So we started riding, and then he knew two other guys, Matt and Justin, which are the four founders of Breakfast.
So how did you know Matt and Justin? How did they get?
While he was in SF, I spent a lot of time riding by myself. Honestly, my dad lived out in Wimberley, so we go out there and ride together. But I'd maybe done 1 or 2 group rides total. I met Matt and Justin through my wife, actually. Matt has a couple startups in town, and my wife worked for him at a couple of them.
Cool.
So we kind of met that way. He was training for an Ironman. I was doing an Ironman. My sister, Lexi was like, hey, you guys should meet. Matt invited me out on a ride, and it was like a group ride, and he tells the story of like, hey, I don't know if this guy's going to be able to keep up, but I invited him. I have no idea who he is. They were the ones that...
Did they give you a hard time? Or?
They were a little bit more beginner than I was.
Okay, all right. Awesome. It all works out.
I'll say it politely. Yeah. But then Matt and I became good friends, and then Matt and Justin know each other from the Austin startup world.
And yeah, I think part of this story is triathlon, right? So it was the three of you guys doing training for Ironman. And Grant, were you in that?
I was even in that world. I was doing half Ironmans and stuff.
Yeah,
just that
which everyone remember that. That's an important piece of the tale here for Breakfast Club. All right, so yeah, I mean, let's get into the Breakfast Club story here. You guys, the four of you, I guess are kind of training together, riding together here and there. What comes next?
I think by me moving back and knowing Jake, and
this is like Matt 2019, moving into 2020.
End of 2019. It's like I loved riding a bike, but I rode an SF by myself. Jake primarily rode by himself here with Matt and Justin. It's like, who do we ride with? Well, we'll ride with each other. So we would meet at the Carpenter Hotel on Saturday mornings because Matt and Justin were dads and working and everything. That was the best time to do it. And we would just ride for a couple hours. The focus was more on just riding, hanging out, climbing some hills, and then eating breakfast and catching up. And we definitely use cycling as an avenue to hang out and not train.
We transitioned then into COVID hits in March of 2020, and what sparked Breakfast Club? What sort of motivated you guys to gather a group together? So tell us about that.
Well, I think it's also important to note, you kind of alluded to it on the triathlon thing. I rode a tri-bike. Matt, I think at the time, was riding a tri-bike.
Not a lot of shaved legs in this group.
Not a lot of shaved legs. Showing up to a group ride with a tri-bike is not seen as the best thing.
I remember Jake kind of had a poncho almost too. You had a windbreaker, a loose windbreaker. I remember that too.
And I think that's again what kind of sparked us doing our own thing, because we were just I don't care what bike you're gonna ride. We know each other. We're just gonna have a good time.
And we don't come from a riding background,
right? Road riding background.
We through word of mouth, kept people who wanted to ride outside were like, hey, we're gonna meet at Carpenter Hotel and we're gonna ride. And it grew through friends and friends to a point where the four of us riding at Carpenter Hotel, it was now 15 of us, and we're like, oh, this is interesting. Now we're overcrowding the cafe at Hot L Coffee. And we just ultimately decided hey, people are kind of liking this as we talk about it, and it's a new approach to riding that we didn't really see in Austin or really anywhere. So it's let's just put it on Instagram and see if anyone else wants to come, or just at least show the story a little bit on social media, and then kind of the rest is history.
All right. The context is, Breakfast Club is really special because of its inclusive nature. Like Grant was just saying, hey, show up, ride. Really, it doesn't matter what sort of skill level you are. We're there to be outside to enjoy company and get a little workout. This really is at odds with a lot of cycling road riding culture. It's show up at the group. It's somewhat standoffish. There's not a lot of conversation and camaraderie a lot of the time. And I know this from personal experience, having ridden over the last 10 years in 3 different cities, Philadelphia, LA, and Austin. So personally, I arrived in Austin in September of 2020, and almost immediately people that rode bikes somehow word was getting around. They were like, "Oh, have you joined Breakfast Club?" And I like had no idea what it is. I don't think a lot of people did at that point. So I was like, "Hey, I'm coming to this city. I don't know a lot of people. I've met a lot of people through riding bikes. Like this is a great outlet for me." So right out of the gate, it was something very unique and very special. I think with what I'm talking about is the group rides in Philly and LA, which some of them have been around for literally decades. Again, there's this attitude. It's not the camaraderie. It's not the friendliness. It's not the inclusivity that you guys were bringing right out of the gate. So the questions are really, okay, so you've gathered 15 or so people to ride every weekend. How did the Breakfast Club name come about? And how did you start to brand it and actually decide to create the logo, create the Instagram page, and put it online?
Yeah, I mean, I think because our emphasis was more on the after riding, eating breakfast part of it. I forget which one of us said it, but it
was Justin.
It may have been Justin. He's like, "Oh, we're at the Breakfast Club. We ride bikes, but really we just hang out and eat breakfast."
Sums it up.
We would take up one booth at Swedish Hill outside. Right. That was where we would. Yeah. We had our table. We would do the ride, start at Carpenter. We'd have our table at Swedish Hill, and that's where I think maybe Justin is the first one who suggested that name.
And the true nature of it, was really kind of formalized in this Tour das Hugel ride, which is an epic ride in Austin. And I don't even think I was there for this first one, but Jake, Matt, and Justin all did it and ended up bailing out in Westlake Hills, which is 15 or 20 miles into it, an hour and a half into this 6-hour ride. They're like, "No, we're not enjoying this. We're going to go eat breakfast." And so that just solidified the nature of
the legend is made.
What our crew is doing. It's the emphasis is not on the riding. The emphasis is on the people.
And I think the appeal for both Grant and I, maybe Matt and Justin are the ones that facilitated this, but the appeal for Grant and I is we just came from a background where swimming was everything, competition was everything. Mm-hmm. You wanted to be the best. You wanted to do everything that you could possibly do to inch out every
split second
fiber of your being to be better. And we're talking in a 4-minute race, 2 seconds being world difference. Right. And so we come out of that world, we leave, and it's hard to turn that part of your brain off. And so when I started riding, I started with nothing, but then I was like, oh, can I get good at this? Or how good can I get at this? And then it was immediately just kind of whoa, wait a second. I'm doing this for fun. I'm not doing this to be the best in the world. And I think when we were set out to go do that Tour das Hugel ride, and then Matt and Justin are like, "No, let's just go eat." And for a second, I'm like, "Wait a second, I want to do the whole ride." And then on the other part of me, I'm like, "You know what?
Yeah,
I do want to go eat breakfast.
Yeah,
I don't want to do this."
And I think that we just found a lot of people had that same desire. There was just really not ever an outlet to do that in the cycling world. So that was kind of our motivation. Was we had through word of mouth grown it to 15, 20 people. We're clearly there's this desire out there amongst the community. Let's see what happens. And so I literally remember sitting down designing the logo with a friend, and then all of a sudden we put it on. And I wasn't even at the first ride. I was home in Kansas, and the first ride happened, and I think it was still that 20-person group, and something. And then it just kind of took fire from there. And I distinctly remember within a couple months, we hit one ride. I remember the first ride. You were there. I think it was shortly after we hit 70 people, and I was like, whoa, this is huge. How did this happen? Before we knew it, we were splitting into groups because, we want everyone to show up. It doesn't matter your skill level. And we had varied skill levels in that group of 70. So it's okay, it's time to split this in half.
Yeah.
We went to 2 groups, and we went to 3. We're now at 4. It's just managing that massive growth.
Again, at the core of Breakfast Club is this inclusive nature, and I think you guys have probably been responsible for a lot of people's first group ride. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I mean for those that are sort of just learning about Breakfast Club at this point, a little bit more than 2 years in, there are 500 people showing up to rides every month. So the scale is massive, but it started somewhere. like, what were the difficulties between your inclusive mission and getting beginner cyclists, on the road at scale?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good question, because when you do open arms, allow anybody to come, anybody's going to come. And so I remember I was training for an Ironman at the time, so I would do my long runs on Friday, and then Saturday we would have the ride, and I would take what is now our D group, but I would be the very last person, so nobody goes slower than me. And then I would kind of form a group there at the back of people. I remember we had a lady who was, I think she was 75 years old, came one time.
I don't think I've heard the story.
And we were rolling back. This was back when we were at holdout, so fast forward a couple bit. But we were rolling back, and she told me she had a stroke 3 years before, and that she's on the mend. And she didn't want to tell me that before we started, because I wouldn't have let her ride. But it's just, when you open your arms, you have to be ready for whoever comes.
Yeah.
And so you have to keep that true as you scale. Because when you have 15 people, it's easy to let the 10 go, and the 5 newbies, or maybe not newbies, but just people who aren't as dedicated to cycling, you can kind of form that group. But as it grows and grows, and you continue opening your arms, you got to be ready for whoever shows up.
At that same ride that amazing 75-year-old woman was at, we probably had, a person who's been racing bikes for a couple of years also in that same group. So we, in order to manage that difference in like skill level, we kind of people kind of self-identified themselves as like people that wanted to help, and we're like, oh, could you help take this group of 5, and could you help take this group of 5, and just kind of help us like manage those groups. And then fast forward now, like those people have now became like official, they're like our ride leaders, they're our ambassadors, and we have like 24 ride leaders that manage our 500 person ride experience now. But it's kind of like people that just were showing up, and they're like, I want to help, I feel a part of this, and they felt ownership around it. And
that's incredible. And for any organization, and at this point you guys are an organization, sort of management is key, right? It's like that's how you scale through,
because you got to keep it safe, you got to keep it welcoming.
And those people that started taking ownership of groups and helping others, it's like they felt a part of Breakfast Club, and like we didn't force it upon them. They were like, hey, I want to do this. And so as we grew, we brought more people into the mix that just wanted to be a part of it. And so that's one of the big things that we do now to help manage that scale. Is like we have people that, one group now, B group, can be 150 to 200 people, and it's like we can have 4, 5, 6 ride leaders in that group helping manage that.
Incredible.
Scale.
Yeah. So I guess, do you guys want to, it might be tough to run through all 24 names, but do you want to shout out a few of the OG ride leaders?
I don't know if we can shout out specifics, because everyone is so unique and amazing, but it's so cool to see that like our ride leaders, like we've had some OGs from like the first ride or two now like move away and still like stay in touch. And like, this is amazing, there's nothing else like this.
Or you can even feel like, for instance, our C group was ran by somebody named Len, who moved back.
Len Rosenoff. Yeah. Shout out Len Rosenoff.
He moved back to DC, but he is the heart and soul of that group. And if you go and ride with that group today, even though he hasn't been here for a year plus, it feels like Len is there.
Yeah.
Because he started
the tone.
And he set the tone. And what's so interesting riding with each group is very different. And they need to be that way. A group shouldn't be ran the same way as C, shouldn't be ran the same as B and D. They all kind of have their own little identity.
Yeah. So it's definitely like he's the legend that lives on.
Len, in a lot of ways, I think probably embodies the spirit of Breakfast Club. Right? Yeah.
I mean, you look at him and just him himself, you wouldn't think of him as an amazing cyclist, but he is. And I think that's the cool thing about Breakfast Club is you look at some people and you're like, you don't fit what that typical norm may look like.
I will definitely spend some time talking about Len. Len rolled up in cut-off sleeves and a mountain bike.
Yeah.
And sure enough, over weeks and months, he really got more into road riding, got a sweet bike, got, his kit, and I think Breakfast Club had a really outsized impact on his life as well.
Yeah.
And by the way, the other note about Len, Len would like love going out and riding in 100-degree Texas heat.
He loved it.
Because he refused to wear sleeves. I think the first time he wore sleeves was the Breakfast Club kit that he got, and we all joked like, "Len, are you gonna cut
rip
off
those
of
sleeves,
this new
bro?"
kid?"
Yeah.
Like he didn't.
When he left, I took one of my Breakfast Club jerseys and cut the sleeves off.
You did.
And we signed it for him. I hope he still has it.
Yeah.
We talked about how you guys managed scale from a handful of riders to 60 riders within a few weeks, and then pretty quickly breaking 100, and then more than 2 years in, 500-600 people. We've got this great sort of ride leader management team. What are some of the growing pains for managing an operation like that?
I think one of the growing pains that we had originally was location. Venue. So, like I said before, we used to have our one booth at Swedish Hill. Then we had 2 booths. Then we had the entire outside. Then we had their parking lot. Yeah. Swedish Hill is not a big venue. For those that aren't from Austin, it's a small bakery, and Saturdays is also their day, where they're probably going to get the most amount of business. So can't have it like clogged with cyclists getting 2 hours to get a bagel. Then we moved on to Holdout, which is a brewery across the street. They were amazing to us. They have a huge parking lot, which allowed people to park.
And they had a big outdoor area, and I remember, we grew to like 100, 120 at Swedish Hill, and that's when we hit growing pains. So then we moved to Holdout, and I remember we grew to like 200, 250, and then we hit growing pains. Like, sadly, Austin's a tight, condensed place downtown, and it's like we hit legal capacity at these places, and it's like then we have to think about can the kitchen even manage all this stuff? So we outgrew Holdout once we hit like 200, 250, and then luckily Central Machine Works opened their arms, and that place can hold thousands, it seems like.
1,500 people or so.
Home sweet home now.
Yeah, so Central Machine Works is the current home for Breakfast Club.
And that's where we saw another big jump. It's as our venue gets bigger, kind of just fills with
Breakfast Club fills the space.
Yeah.
If it's provided the opportunity, it's amazing the community.
And then the struggle of moving to Central Machine Works is so the motto's always been ride for about 2 hours, have breakfast afterwards and beers if you want.
And those 2 hours have always been hills. It's like,
so the west side of the west side
quality
of Austin,
over quantity.
Yeah, exactly. The west side of Austin is very hilly. Central Machine Works is located on the east side of Austin, which is a little bit more flat. And so once we moved out there, we had to figure out a way to get across town because we wanted to stay true to riding those hills.
To like what Breakfast Club was founded on. So we were then asking our 20-some ride leaders to take groups of 50, 60, 70 across town, stopping at every red light, and we were jamming up traffic. And, we essentially decided that the next step for us, given our location and size, was to start having police escorts to just get us out of town. And it started with 1 or 2, and we would roll out in mass. And now that's grown to we have 2 escorts per group that goes west or east or whatever, and that's A, B, and C groups. And so we have 6 escorts now that we're ultimately at the
6
point,
police escorts.
Yeah.
Wow.
Where it's like a rolling enclosure per se. So we're not just out of town; they actually help lead us around beyond that.
And we were talking before recording about how you guys couldn't imagine how you did it before the police escort. So this is so
each one of those things that Grant talked about is splitting into groups. That ride, we come to the finish and we're like, how did we do this before that? Like, how did we do that? Yeah. And then we went to ride leaders and we're like, how did we do this without the ride leaders? And then we go into the first ride back with the police escort. It's just like, how did we do this without them going across town?
It's like thinking about what those decisions we've made. It was never like a proactive, this will be good for us to allow us to grow. It was always like a
pretty reactive.
Wow, we have to do this to manage the growth, right? So I think we're finally at a point now where going into this year, I think we have hit stability. I think, and I hope. And so we're no longer just managing growth and trying to keep up with the safety and the experience, but now we can think about okay, we have some stability here. How can we just continue to perfect what we're doing and not just manage the crazy growth and all that comes.
Grant and I chatted a few weeks ago, and one of the topics was, I was reassuring him. I think the Breakfast Club brand is established, and folks are always looking out for the next ride, and it's a robust community. But one of the things that you guys brought up, with the police escorts and with this 600-person monthly event that you're hosting, there are costs, and you guys, have some initial ideas for sort of developing the business. However, Grant really emphasized how important it is to keep the essence of Breakfast Club, to keep it really inclusive, but also do cool stuff, and also keep the lights on and grow, and grow, whatever that means. So what do you guys think growth means from a business perspective, from a business model? What are the plans?
Yeah, I'll kind of let Jake jump in on that, but I think that we didn't start this to make it a business. We started this to ride with people, and now we've fallen into this situation where in order to do what we do at this point, we have costs with the police escorts and stuff to cover. So we've done fun stuff with merch, and we really much enjoyed doing really cool stuff and that sort of thing, but that's not gonna be super sustainable. So yeah, we've now kind of reached a point where we're bringing on brands and partners that believe in us and what we're doing in Austin and the community to help cover those costs and kind of do some pretty cool stuff.
Did you have something to add?
You got to keep it going. It's so magical. I can't even put it into words, and I've always tried, but you just can't, showing up to a ride and feeling the atmosphere afterwards. And so we got to do what we can do to keep this thing rolling, keep it safe, and again, keep our arms open to whoever wants to come. And I think having that rolling enclosure, the police escorts, is something that is going to keep everyone a lot safer, and hopefully encourage more people to come out. And like Grant said, we got to cover those costs.
And it's cool. Like Jake said, keep people coming out. It's, every ride we ask people to raise your hand if it's your first time riding with Breakfast Club, and a third of the ride, no matter what size the ride is, a third of the people seem to raise their hand that it's their first time.
So we're talking about 150 people.
Yeah. Can just go up. So it's how do we, cover the cost of the escorts, but still stay true and keep people feeling that energy, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And something we always have stood by is we're not going to charge to come to this monthly ride.
Yeah.
You're going to come. We don't care who you are. Please come. We're not going to charge.
Yeah.
So it's how do you build a business around something that isn't built around being free and open?
And it sounds like it's a work in progress.
Yeah, we've historically been associated with Rafa, which is an amazing brand, and we've done some custom kits with them and really leaned into the whole merch side and product side of things, and it's been a blast. But we have some cool partnerships in the works where they're going to allow us some opportunity to grow the brand, as well as just lean into the amazing people that come to our rides here in Austin, and hopefully allow us to bring more people from outside of Austin to experience what we're doing down here, and also maybe throw some Breakfast Club events outside of our home as
awesome
well.
Yeah. And I think a lot of folks listening will be very curious and excited to hear about what the brand partnerships are for 2023 and what you guys have around the corner. So can you give us some specifics on that and just what the year holds?
This is a cool year for us because we're in year 3 of existence, and we've gone from 4 founders that we've kind of done so far to now a team of 9 of us, and we have a team around operations and a team around creative, and we're all gonna, for the first time ever, we've put out a calendar of our rides, and because instead of a weekly ride or a once a month,
I think that was the most recent Instagram
we're planning
post.
ahead for the first time and not just flying by the seat of our pants and planning a week before a ride. But we have, when you show up to a Breakfast Club ride, there are a few things you experience. It's a ton of people, some sort of pre-ride nutrition, coffee, hydration thing, and then the post-ride, food, hang out, and drink, whether it's non-alcoholic or alcoholic beverages. And so we have some partnerships in the works for all all aspects.
So lay them on us. What do you got?
So I mean, I guess first is we're leaving Rafa and we're going with a new brand called Ponner Mall, and they're historically a very European, amazing product that is breaking into the U.S. and they're going to lean heavy into our community, and we're going to have a really exciting time with them, doing product and experience stuff in Austin and outside.
So we can
of
expect
Austin.
some Ponner Normal kits for 2023.
We don't know yet, but
all right,
we're planning some
people are going to be asking.
Yeah. And then we have Jake can kind of tell the story, but we're kind of filling our nutrition space with a local brand as well that kind of has a similar like founding story to us, and they're close to home. So we're going to be working with BPN a little bit.
Yeah. I've never personally met him yet, but I've followed him for a while, Nick Bear, and I think he's done a lot of cool things, kind of built organic growth through his following and built a brand
YouTube,
on top
right?
of that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And built a brand on top of that, and he has an amazing community that follows his brand and stays true to it. And it's kind of cool to watch him grow over time because he's experienced a ton of growth in the last couple of years. And watching him stay true to that is something that we look forward to as well, because that is so important, because you never want to leave that.
And the cool thing with that is like we have so many of our like a handful of riders that like already work at BPN that have just been riding with us for a year or two, and so they know the community, and they're going to lean in heavy, just not even from a product side, but from like a media and a photo and video, and just help us tell the story, because like our worlds are colliding, and so that's a pretty exciting one for us.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's a big initiative. It's a lot of word of mouth right now, I believe. People will see us on Instagram, kind of get an idea through pictures, what the ride looks like, but you don't really know until you're there, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so we want to try to showcase that to someone who's never been.
So yeah,
it's hard to show someone who has this idea of what cycling is and what group rides is, to say like that's not what we do, what we promise, but it kind of looks like that. But it's not. It's just like you're playing that game.
And I think this is a great transition into a question that I wanted to ask earlier about the word of mouth. You guys creating these channels. I think Instagram and Slack are probably the two that are most active. And just creating this wildly engaged community that's definitely local. It's definitely Austin, but it goes really far beyond that. So, Grant, as I think most folks in town know, you're the guru. You're the local Instagram Breakfast Club guru.
I do make the posts.
Yeah. How did it work? I mean, how did you get such a sticky following? And then we can go into, you guys were talking about plans for this year and developing your content. We'll discuss what's next, but how did it start?
I mean, we don't have a massive following in the grand scheme of things on social media.
But it's engaged. It's an engaged following.
It's the quality, right?
Yeah.
of the people. And so, one thing that's been cool from the beginning is we've had Colin Fenley, who's an amazing photographer who doesn't even ride a bike, show up and take photos for us and showcase like the everyday person. And so we put that on Instagram. We kind of flipped the model of like showcasing like amazing elite athletes to just showing showing on Instagram whoever shows up. And so
Colin took the best picture of my legs.
Yeah, he does that.
Yeah, shout out Colin Finley for taking incredible pictures of my legs.
Yeah.
So many of our riders are amazing photographers.
Yeah.
Similar to our ride leaders, some of them are ride leaders, but volunteering their time and taking cool pictures of the rides is definitely contributing.
Yeah, it's like now, like it's just so easy because we have like a community that provides amazing like content to post and show on social media. And so through our BPN partnership as well, they're going to help us just fuel that fire of like showing what we're all about and who is there being a part of it. And so that's going to be a big focus for us this year.
Cool. Yeah, but back to the initial the initial posts, like getting people to engage with the Instagram, like what I mean, and by the way, this goes into another theme that I wanted to touch on today, which is Austin. So do you guys think that the Austin culture here was part of the secret sauce in Breakfast Club's success, and if so, like, what about the culture here really helped?
I think, to make a mass generalization of Austin, I feel like it's quite a bit more laid back than some of the other major cities in the country. That contributes to it. I think, similar to your story, a lot of people moved here in 2020 and 2021 and are still moving here. Don't know anybody, and so we're hopefully providing that outlet into a new community to meet new people.
And staying true to like how Austin feels. Like I remember before Breakfast Club was even a thought, Jake was like always talking about like, I would love to one day like just do something that just like is a part of Austin and just feels like Austin. Because like Jake is from Texas and grew up not far from here, and it's home for him. He's like, I would like something just like when you think of it or you go to experience it, it's like, yeah, that feels like Austin. And so I feel like we're always trying to continue to make sure that that's a goal of ours, is like to stay true to like
totally
where we are and who we are. And, and
just want to add to what makes Austin Austin. We want to be a part of that. We want to be a big part of that.
Yeah,
because Breakfast Club would be nothing if no one showed up, right?
Yeah.
So it's like
well, and back to kind of the social media content. One of the things you guys mentioned before the recording was basically reposting everything. So people tag you guys, shout you out, and then they're automatically on the Breakfast Club stories. So I think that was really key to sort of the core, the essence of Breakfast Club, because it's not over curated. We're not all taking ourselves too seriously.
Yeah.
It's about the culture. It's about people being outside riding bikes with each other, and it's not an elite vibe. It's not overly curated.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think again, I just am in agreement with you. I think that's part of why the channel was able to grow like it has and keep the engagement.
Yeah. If you tag us in story, I'll likely repost it unless it's really, really bad.
And I think another big part of it is we used to ride weekly.
Yeah.
Like every Saturday we would do this, and it becomes a lot. We're asking a lot of ourselves. We're asking a lot of those ride leaders. And so when we made the move last year to go once a month, and when we did that, we wanted to keep the community going outside of that. And so that's when we launched the Slack channel. The goal of that was to say, let's say we go on a ride and I talk to 50 people during the ride. I don't have all their numbers. I don't know who I'm going to meet. I'm going to talk to them for a little bit. Then I might not see them again for the rest of the day. How do I make sure that I can connect with that person at another time? And so we launched that Slack channel so that hopefully people can organically say like, hey, it's Thursday. It's 4 p.m. I'm going out on a ride. I'm leaving from Carpenter. I'll be riding about this fast. Who wants to join me?
Yeah.
And
that's happened.
Right? Oh, it happens.
Yeah, there's so many channels on that Slack on that Slack now.
Yeah, it's incredible. I mean, we have our big rides now, or when everyone ideally gets together, and those are 400, 500 people. But like the Slack has 1,000 people in it, so it's like when
it's
when
active.
People, and it's active.
It is crazy active.
It has its own marketplace on it now for essentially for like.
And a lot of product is on there. It's
cool. Yeah, a lot of cool stuff.
I slept on the Slack channel, and I got on there recently, and I was like, "Holy God!" I mean, it's the really amount of product moved on there is significant.
Cool. It's got a heartbeat of its own.
It sure does. It sure does.
And that was like because of the scale of such a big ride going weekly, it didn't make sense. So going once a month and having an active community to connect on Slack, when it's the 3 weeks that we're not like all riding officially, like that was like a risk that we took, but something that I think has just made it even more special because people feel like it is their club to own. Yeah. Like Breakfast Club is their club, and they're a part of it. They can host rides, they can throw stuff together, and so just kind
of. And we want to make each ride intentional. The monthly rides that we're doing, do it as big as we can. Again, gets into that spend money, you got to make money.
Yeah.
Make sure that you can still do those things, but we want to do it as big as we can every ride and constantly improve and constantly get better.
Yeah, because what we're founded on and what we're good at is like bringing people together and riding and hanging out afterwards. So that's what we're going to focus on this year even more.
Cool. So it's kind of wrapping up. I was going to ask what the legacy you guys want to leave on cycling in Austin is. So what do you think?
I'll go first, then I'll let Grant go. Mine is going to go back to that point. I want to be a solidified part of what makes Austin, Austin, cyclist or not. And I want somebody to feel that whether it's your first time riding a bike since having a curfew or you're a seasoned vet, there's a place for you. And again, we don't take ourselves too seriously.
There's a place for you with open arms. I mean,
yeah,
really
exactly.
For everyone.
And then, yeah, like I said, I just love Austin so much. I think it's one of the coolest cities in the world. And so to add to that is just amazing. And yeah.
I think, like, yeah, absolutely. And just, like, flipping the model of the traditional, like, approach to riding a bike. Typically, like, you ride a bike to, like, better yourself athletically or chase some sort of competitive aspect, or you're just out there trying to, like, meet a couple people. I want Breakfast Club to, like, cycling is an avenue, but the focus of Breakfast Club is not the riding aspect. It's the, like, hanging out after and meeting people and connecting and making friendships that you may go, you know, just, like, get a beer with later and not even think about bikes. You know,
yeah.
I want it to be, like, a point for, like, I mean, you know, this is one of the most amazing things is, like, we just had our first Breakfast Club wedding where two people, Matt and Summer, met because of Breakfast Club, dated, got engaged, and are married and still ride with Breakfast Club. It's like, that's, I think,
that's a success story.
Yeah, that's the magic of Breakfast Club. It's like cycling allowed that to happen, but, like, that cycling is not the focus of that. So
yeah. Perfect way, perfect legacy to leave. All right, guys. Well, this has been such a pleasure, and for me personally, Breakfast Club has been arguably the most impactful part of my existence here in Austin over the last two and a half years. I mean, I moved here, and literally within 6 weeks, I was riding with Grant and Jake and a handful of other people that have become dear friends to me, you know, lifelong friends. And by the way, I mean, back to, you know, hill climbers and the theme, people that I'll probably be doing business with as well. So I really, and my wife has met a lot of her friends, a lot of her girlfriends through Breakfast Club. You know, I really owe a lot to you two in what you've created here, and it's real. And I'm obviously just one person. So when that's extrapolated to the, you know, hundreds of, you know, maybe thousands of people that have ridden bikes with you guys, it's very meaningful for my existence here in Austin. So thank you guys so much.
Thanks for being a part of it.
So meaningful to us as well. Yeah. Would have never imagined.
Yeah.
And it is so cool to be a part of.
Yeah. All right. What a great note to end on. Thanks for making time, guys.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
That was fun.
Cheers.
Damn, that flew by.